Second half of that post that I wanted to share with you about why use labels and what are some different ways that you can use labels. So to start you off, I'm going to show you, go back to those opportunities to respond hierarchy that I had made. And what I did was I made an alternative here that doesn't have quite as many levels in my hierarchy. And I just wanted to show you how I put the labels in there. So the first thing I wanted to point out was that you have to try to use a combination of codes and labels. And remember how I showed you behind here, I've got, now you're not seeing my links at this point, but I've got all of my activation links and exclusive links to pair a lot of my labels and my codes together. So let me hide those for a second here. But with each new level you add, once you reach the bottommost level of your hierarchy, you can see it's like a tree diagram. Once you hit the label level, the very bottom level where you only have labels and you don't have codes anymore, you kind of get stopped. So you can see here, the simplest version of my opportunities to respond I had made, I'm going to make over here on the right. So I have just a simple count of opportunities to respond, and then I have a choice of verbal or nonverbal, and then what type of response, whether it was a group, individual, or volunteer basis, where the teacher was just asking for students, to raise hands. So in this case, I just made, you can see these blue dots mean those are labels, which means I can't put any information inside these labels, which means I can't add another level underneath. I couldn't add whether, like, the correctness of the response. I'm going to show you in just a second why it's important to have information in the inside of other labels. So in this 3-level hierarchy, I still have behind my codes, I have a duplicate label for each of these. And you can see how I've set this up. I have this code activating this label, which activates the code that is above it, which means when I'm activating this, let me put this in code mode here for you. You can see I have a timeline. I've already done some coding in here for this particular video. Again, this is just it was a practice video to test my codes. So you can see here when I go to code mode, what happens when I press this. When I press group, it activates them in a hierarchy like this. When I press this, it activates it in a hierarchy. So that when I go to my actual code window, let me pause this for a second. When I point to an event, you can see an opportunity to respond is now tagged with information. So I know that this particular opportunity to respond, which is opportunity number 18, was a group response, and it was a nonverbal opportunity to respond. That's really important information that's now tagged about that particular event. That's the importance of labels. So if I wanted to add another level, that's when I have to start being specific. I can't just go right away to labels here. And I wanted to show you that here. This is what I showed you last time. That's why my level here, I now called this, instead of just group, individual, volunteer, I called it group V, individual V, volunteer V, V being verbal, and group N, individual N, volunteer N for nonverbal. And then I've got, let me go to edit mode. Underneath here, I actually have 2 levels of labels. Now one that's going to go to this code and one that's going to go to that code. And as you can imagine, with each level of a hierarchy that you're going to bring down, it's going to get that much more complicated. So it's up to you to decide systematically how many levels is appropriate for whatever you're trying to do in your hierarchy. So I hope I didn't make it more confusing, but I just wanted to show you systematically kind of what you need to think about when you're doing a hierarchy. That was just one little piece of what I wanted to show you today. The real piece is why, again, I showed you in that timeline, yes, it's great that I have this information labeled inside each event, but why is that so important? Well, I can visually see when events are overlapping, okay? I can say, of these opportunities to respond, I can see that, this particular one was verbal. That's great. I can look at it and say, by pointing at it, that was verbal. But if I was going to export this information to analyze, perhaps in a statistics window, or if I wanted to bring it to, a statistics program, I can click the matrix button. The more information I have in this kind of format, the easier it is to see trends, and that's why we use labels. So let me expand this out so you can see. I'm going to pull this down so you can really see what's happening here. So let's look at, I'm just going to look at my purple opportunities to respond. This was my simpler of the two windows. What's nice about the matrix window is I can drag these labels up at the top. Here are my codes. Here are my labels. This shows you a frequency count of how often these are occurring together. So if I wanted to compare of all of my opportunities to respond, how many were nonverbal and how many were verbal. This one's a little confusing because I have to look at my ones and my twos because I was showing you two examples. So let me pull here. Here's my nonverbal OTRs, and of course, did I not code any verbal? Oh, here's my verbal one. So I can drag them next to each other so I can compare them. Here they are. So I can see right now I had more verbal than nonverbal. That's a quick and easy way to see right in this matrix window how many there were. That's why these labels are really important. I use the matrix window sometimes as a quick visual tool because with the click of a button, you see a full matrix of frequencies. I also just like to design my code windows to give me these outputs right away. You'll see that I use scripting all the time. I can see it was 11 versus 7 right on my code window with some simple scripts. Show count instances where row equals verbal OTRs. And then I have the same thing here for nonverbal OTRs. So I find that scripting is powerful because it's showing me live. It's also a great way for me to check that my code windows are working. So when I actually go to practice, I just open a random video and I click code mode and I just start clicking things and make sure all these numbers are moving the way they're supposed to when I click it. So for all of those reasons that I just said, these labels are really important to be able to have and tag information inside codes. I know I've reported a little bit on this, it's been a long time ago, but because the question keeps popping up, why are these labels so important? I thought it was good for me to reiterate this. I'm going to move forward in these next couple posts to talk about where I'm going with my research and to show you me building my next code window. So if you have other specific questions and other things you want me to show you how to do, I'd be happy to post about that as well.